Only the so-called angry humans came to the rescue. The galaxy had always seemed endless, a vast ocean of stars stretching farther than anyone could see. Planets spun lazily around distant suns, their colors reflecting the light like precious gems scattered across the dark velvet of space. Among these stars, civilizations rose and fell, their histories written in the silence of voids and the echoes of war. Yet for all their achievements, for all their technology and wisdom, the alien races of the United Star Coalition faced a threat unlike anything they had ever imagined. It had begun slowly, almost unnoticed, at the edges of known space. Small colonies vanished without warning. Communication signals ended abruptly, leaving behind only silence. The Vorash swarm, as the Coalition had come to call them, were relentless, consuming everything in their path. They were not cruel in the way humans understood cruelty. They were precise, efficient, and unstoppable. Every attempt to fight them failed. Fleets of the most advanced ships, armed with weapons that could split planets, had been reduced to drifting wrecks. The aliens had no words for fear, but if they did, it would have been on every face in every council chamber. The Coalition gathered its leaders on the bridge of the command ship, the Aurelia Prime, orbiting a world under siege. Admiral Kryn, a tall, blue-skinned alien with eyes like liquid silver, spoke with calm authority, though even he could not hide the tension in his tone. The Vorash advance is faster than predicted. Our fleets are insufficient. We must decide whether to hold this system or evacuate. Counselor Thale, a being with multiple limbs and translucent skin that revealed shifting patterns of light beneath, shook their head. Evacuation is impossible. The swarm surrounds the planet. Any attempt will be met with immediate attack. If we do nothing, all civilians will be lost. Discussion continued, voices overlapping in complex languages that resonated through the hull. Plans were proposed and dismissed, analyzed and discarded. The council debated endlessly, seeking a strategy that could outmatch a force that seemed to anticipate every move. No one noticed the humans arriving in orbit, a small, modest fleet that looked almost fragile compared to the gleaming alien ships. Humans had only recently joined the Coalition, their presence both intriguing and troubling to the older races. They were young in galactic terms, untested in wars that spanned centuries. Yet despite their lack of experience, they were bold. Perhaps too bold, some whispered. Perhaps too emotional. They were called angry, unpredictable, reckless, but no one had yet seen them in action against a real threat. Captain Mara Vance observed the council from her ship, the Resolve. She had short, dark hair that framed her face and eyes that burned with a calm fire. Her crew moved efficiently, preparing for the mission she had volunteered for without hesitation. The humans had not been asked to wait for orders or follow protocols. They did not debate. They did not overanalyze. They acted. The council finally noticed them, turning to the human fleet with expressions that ranged from skepticism to outright disbelief. "Humans," Admiral Kryn said slowly, his tone carrying both warning and curiosity. "Do you truly intend to engage the swarm?" "Yes," Vance replied simply, her voice steady. "We do not wait when lives are at stake. We act." The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. They had never encountered such directness, such certainty in beings they considered immature, volatile, and, by their standards, emotional. The humans prepared their ships, not with overwhelming firepower, but with ingenuity. Drones were dispatched to scan the swarm. Sensors were configured in unconventional ways. Every human ship was equipped with adaptive tools that could change function mid-flight, a level of improvisation the aliens found alarming. As the humans approached the besieged planet, the scale of the devastation became clear. Cities that had once shone brightly with the light of millions of lives were darkened and silent. Structures were twisted into impossible shapes, but no explosions marked their destruction. The Vorash did not attack with fire or missiles. They consumed, dismantling with precision. It was terrifying to watch, but humans saw possibility where others saw hopelessness. Vance instructed her crew to deploy small reconnaissance units. They moved in tight formation, scanning for weaknesses. Unlike the Coalition fleets, which relied on sheer strength and predetermined strategies, the humans adapted to every change in the swarm's behavior. They observed patterns and predicted movements in real time, a kind of instinct that had no analog in the alien fleets. One of the young human pilots, Lieutenant Jaron Holt, reported with a mixture of awe and excitement. "Captain, they are moving faster, but their formation repeats every 4 cycles. If we disrupt the center, the rest will scatter." Vance nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Then we disrupt it. Prepare the central maneuvers. Keep the civilians safe first. Nothing else matters." Meanwhile, on the planet below, people had begun to notice the human fleet. Families pressed their faces to viewports, seeing ships unlike any they had ever imagined. Sleek angular designs that seemed fragile but moved with impossible speed. They whispered, "They are angry," not in fear but in admiration. There was something inspiring about humans, something that stirred hope where despair had taken root. Back in orbit, the humans made their first move. Small craft darted in unpredictable patterns, drawing attention away from the civilian zones. They did not fire indiscriminately, did not rely on overwhelming force. Instead, they created confusion. The swarm, which had never encountered such erratic behavior, hesitated. Tiny errors appeared in their formation, like cracks in a perfect crystal. The aliens observing the humans from the Aurelia Prime could hardly believe their eyes. Counselor Thale whispered, "They are improvising, they are not following our standard tactics, yet they are effective." Vance's voice came over the comms, calm and clear. "We are not here to fight in your way, we are here to save lives. Follow us if you wish, but do not expect us to behave as you would." It was a bold statement, one that left many in the council silently uneasy. The humans were breaking every rule, every assumption. They were, in the eyes of others, angry, but it was an anger that was focused, disciplined, and full of purpose. It was unlike any emotion the aliens had ever seen, and it made them uncomfortable. On the planet, people began to move toward emergency shelters, guided by human drones that projected paths and safe zones. There was no panic, no chaos. Instead, there was a strange feeling of security, as if someone, or something, was in control, even when the world itself seemed to be falling apart. The first real test came when a swarm wave descended toward a city still holding survivors. It moved with lethal precision, cutting off exits and targeting key areas to maximize disruption. The humans acted. Vance led a squadron into the heart of the approaching swarm, not with weapons, but with tools that could manipulate the environment. Magnetic fields shifted, gravitational patterns altered, and the swarm's formation was broken. From orbit, the coalition watched as what should have been a massacre turned into chaos, for the swarm, not the humans. The so-called anger of humanity, their unpredictable nature, had become a shield, a weapon without destruction. Vance communicated with her team, her voice calm but firm. "Do not engage unless necessary. Our goal is safety, not destruction. Observe, predict, and act where needed. Trust your instincts, trust each other." For hours, the humans moved in patterns that seemed reckless, yet every move was precise. Every decision saved lives. Every risk taken was measured, though it would have seemed impulsive to the aliens. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Civilians were guided to safe zones, small attacks were neutralized, and the swarm, for the first time in known history, faced organized resistance that did not rely on superior firepower. As night fell on the planet, lights flickered back to life in the shelters. Children stared at the viewport, eyes wide with wonder. They had seen humans in action and understood without words that these beings were extraordinary. They were not just strong or fast or intelligent. They were daring, adaptable, and unafraid. The aliens of the coalition convened again in the Aurelia Prime, silent and contemplative. No one spoke immediately. Finally, Admiral Kryn said, "Perhaps we underestimated them. Perhaps they are exactly what we needed." Vance, on her ship, knew this was only the beginning. The swarm had retreated slightly, but they would return, stronger and more determined. Yet for the first time, she felt a flicker of hope, not because of technology, not because of numbers, but because of the human spirit. That spirit was angry, yes, but it was a focused, unyielding force that would not allow helplessness to dominate. And in the endless expanse of the galaxy, among stars that had seen so much destruction and despair, humans were beginning to show that they were more than the sum of their flaws. They were a force of life, of courage, and of creativity. They were angry, unpredictable, and utterly unstoppable in their dedication to protecting others. The swarm would return. It always did. But the galaxy had seen a new kind of fighter, one that no logic, no calculation, no experience could predict. The humans were coming, and they would not fail. Captain Vance looked out at the stars, her crew busy at their stations. "We will protect them," she whispered, almost to herself. "No matter what comes." And for the first time in countless cycles, the galaxy believed that might just be enough. The stars above the planet sparkled like scattered diamonds, untouched by the chaos below. From orbit, it was hard to believe the world had been on the edge of destruction only hours before. Captain Mara Vance's ship, the Resolve, glided silently through the void, its crew alert but calm. Their first mission had been a success in small measures. Civilians had been moved to safe zones, and the Vorash swarm had retreated for now. But they all knew this was only the beginning. The swarm was clever, adaptive, and relentless. Humans, too, had to adapt if they were to continue protecting those who could not defend themselves. Vance gathered her crew in the command chamber. They sat in a loose semicircle around her, eyes bright and attentive. Unlike other species of the Coalition, humans did not operate strictly on hierarchy or tradition. They relied on collaboration, conversation, and the trust built in small, shared victories. "We've done well," she began, her voice steady but commanding. "The civilians are safe and the swarm has withdrawn for the moment, but they will return. We cannot wait for them to attack again. We must understand them, predict them. If we fail, there will be no next time." Lieutenant Jaron Holt, the young pilot who had first noticed the swarm's repetitive formation, raised his hand slightly. "Captain, the swarm isn't just one force. It adapts. Every time we interfere, they change. But every change leaves a pattern if we look close enough." Vance nodded. "Exactly. We observe, we analyze, and then we act. We do not wait for perfection. We create it in the moment." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We are not here to destroy them. We are here to save lives. That is our mission. Everything else is secondary." The humans spent hours reviewing scans from the battlefield. They noticed details the Coalition fleets had missed, tiny shifts in swarm movement, the way the creatures avoided areas of turbulence, how they reacted to unexpected obstacles. Where the aliens saw randomness, humans saw opportunity. Meanwhile, the swarm regrouped in the empty space beyond the planet's orbit. It was hard to describe what they were, even for the aliens who had witnessed their destructive power. They were not alive in the way biological creatures were, yet not entirely mechanical. They moved like a living tide, flowing around obstacles, correcting themselves without hesitation. Yet humans had something the swarm did not: imagination. Vance turned to her crew. "We're going to make them pause. We're going to give the civilians a longer window to escape and give ourselves a better chance to understand what we're dealing with. We do this without fighting, at least not in the way they expect." Engineer Lyra Chen smiled faintly. "I've been running simulations. If we redirect the planet's magnetic fields in small, precise ways, we can create currents in the swarm's movement. They'll hesitate, recalibrate, and give us an opening. It won't hurt anyone." The crew leaned in, energized by the plan. Humans were not limited by convention. They were problem solvers first and rules followers second. The aliens had called them angry, but that anger was more than frustration. It was focus, persistence, and the refusal to stand by while others suffered. They moved into position, deploying drones and adaptive tools that could interface with the planet's magnetic field. The operation was delicate. Any miscalculation could endanger the civilians they were trying to protect. The drones hummed softly as they worked, glowing lights shifting in patterns that only human minds could interpret so quickly. From orbit, the swarm began to descend toward another city still untouched by chaos. They moved with perfect synchronization, unaware of the subtle disruptions humans were about to introduce. As the magnetic currents shifted, the creatures slowed, hesitated, and then adjusted. For the first time, they were uncertain. That pause was all humans needed. Vance's team guided the civilians along safe corridors, projected by holographic signals and adaptive drones. Families moved without panic, children holding hands with their parents, eyes wide at the flickering lights that seemed alive and guiding. In that moment, humans were not just rescuers. They were guardians, caretakers, and teachers of calm under pressure. Holt piloted one of the drones close to the edge of the swarm. He marveled at the way it moved in response to the magnetic shifts. "Captain," he said, "they're slowing down more than we expected. If we keep this up, we might even direct them away from the next settlement entirely." Vance smiled, her expression softening for just a moment. "Good work. Keep monitoring and remember, we're not here to harm." Every move must protect lives first. Hours passed. The humans worked tirelessly, coordinating with precision and creativity. Unlike the aliens, who relied on rigid strategies and hierarchical commands, humans improvised, adjusted, and trusted each other's instincts. They were the living embodiment of adaptability, turning every challenge into an opportunity. The swarm, for all its power, struggled to cope with unpredictability. Each pause, each hesitation, each moment of uncertainty was a victory, invisible but vital. On the planet, children watched through reinforced viewports as drones guided families to safety. They saw humans racing through the airless streets in small, agile craft, moving in ways that seemed impossible. The adults whispered stories of the angry humans, imagining beings driven not by hate but by passion and determination. And in every whispered story, the humans became heroes, beings who would risk everything without fear or complaint. By mid-cycle, the humans had achieved more than anyone had expected. They had redirected the swarm away from multiple settlements without a single casualty. The aliens of the coalition, observing from orbit, were silent, unsure how to interpret what they had witnessed. It was not brute force that had achieved this, nor superior technology. It was imagination, courage, and a willingness to act when others hesitated. Humans, in their anger, were patient and deliberate in ways no one had predicted. Vance called her team together again. "We've created an opening. The swarm is confused, uncertain, but they will recover. We cannot rest on this success alone. We must continue to adapt, to predict, to protect." She looked at each of her crew members, pride and determination in her gaze. "Remember, the world is counting on us. Not because we are stronger, not because we are faster, but because we are willing to do what must be done. And we will." Even as the humans planned the next phase, they remained aware of the emotional impact of their actions. They were not warriors in the traditional sense. They did not seek glory. Their focus was compassion, responsibility, and the determination to ensure life continued. This perspective, alien to the coalition, made them frighteningly effective. Where others relied on fear, humans relied on care. Where others relied on logic, humans relied on creativity. Where others relied on order, humans relied on heart. By the end of the cycle, the swarm had moved farther from the planet, disoriented but still present. Humans had gained time, and more importantly, they had gained knowledge. They had observed behavior, patterns, and weaknesses that could not be seen from a distance. Vance reviewed the data, noting small but significant irregularities in the swarm's movements. Each irregularity was an opportunity. Each pause, a potential turning point. Back on the planet, families emerged from shelters to see the night sky lit by the faint glow of human ships above. Children pointed excitedly, adults whispered thanks, and the atmosphere was filled with a rare sense of hope. Even in a galaxy filled with wonders, humans were unique. Their anger, once feared and misunderstood, was now recognized as a force of protection, courage, and ingenuity. Vance looked out at the stars once more, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. The mission was far from over. The swarm would return, and when it did, they would be stronger, faster, and more determined. But so would the humans. They had proven that intelligence alone was not enough to confront the swarm. One needed imagination, courage, and an unyielding will to protect. The crew worked through the cycle, repairing drones, analyzing data, and preparing for the next encounter. Humans thrived under pressure, their energy sustained by purpose. Unlike the aliens, who often sought long rest and deliberation, humans drew strength from activity, from creativity, from action. It was exhausting, yet exhilarating. Every decision, every adjustment, every improvisation brought them closer to their goal, ensuring the safety of lives that could not defend themselves. By dawn, the planet below was quiet, peaceful for the first time since the swarm had arrived. Humans had created order from chaos, safety from fear, and hope from despair. They had acted when others hesitated. They had improvised when others followed rules. They had protected when others could only observe. And as the light of the new day touched the planet's surface, Vance knew this was only the beginning. The Vorash swarm would return, but humans were ready. They would act, improvise, and protect. They were angry, yes, but that anger was now tempered with strategy, compassion, and courage. It was a force unlike any other in the galaxy, a force that would not fail. Captain Mara Vance turned to her crew one last time, her voice calm and steady. "We've made a difference today. Not because we fought harder, not because we are stronger, but because we refuse to let fear guide us. Remember this feeling. Remember that we are here for life, for hope for each other. And when the swarm returns, we will be ready. We will protect and we will endure. Above them, the stars twinkled like a promise. Humans had come to the rescue, and in doing so, they had shown the galaxy that even against an unstoppable force, courage, ingenuity, and heart could make the impossible possible. The galaxy was silent, yet alive. The planet below gleamed under its twin suns, its surface dotted with cities that had survived the first wave of the Vorash swarm, guided and protected by humans. Above in orbit, the Resolve and its companion ships hovered like guardians, their sleek forms reflecting sunlight, yet their crews knew peace was temporary. The swarm had retreated, but only to return stronger and more organized. Captain Mara Vance stood at the command deck's viewport, watching the endless darkness of space stretch beyond. Her mind was already racing ahead, imagining every possible scenario, every angle from which the swarm could strike. She had always believed humans were uniquely capable of seeing possibilities where others saw only danger. That belief had been tested and proven in the last cycle, and now it had to be tested again. "Captain," Lieutenant Holt called from the sensor station, his fingers dancing over the control panel. "I'm picking up something unusual. The swarm isn't just regrouping. They're observing us, not moving randomly. They're circling, scanning. They might be trying to predict our next moves." Vance nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Then let's give them something they can't predict. Prepare the observation drones. We're going to show them the unpredictability of humans." The crew worked in unison, their actions precise but fluid. Unlike the coalition fleets, humans did not follow rigid formations. Their ships moved like dancers, weaving patterns that were both calculated and improvisational. Sensors flickered and hummed, drones zipped across the void, and holographic maps projected over the control deck. Every crew member contributed ideas, suggestions, and adjustments in real time. Humans were not governed solely by plans. They adapted, they experimented, they imagined. Engineer Lyra Chen activated a series of magnetic projectors, devices designed to subtly shift objects in space. "Captain," she said, "if we synchronize these fields with our drones' movements, we can create currents that force the swarm to divert or pause. They'll react to the unexpected patterns we create." Vance's eyes gleamed. "Exactly. Let's turn their strength into confusion, but without causing harm. We're protecting, not attacking. Every diversion should lead them away from the civilians below." As the humans implemented their plan, the swarm moved into position. From a distance, it looked like a single flowing shadow stretching across the void. Yet humans saw patterns. They noticed the small loops, the shifts in angle, the way the swarm adjusted when they encountered obstacles. Holt studied the swarm's behavior, leaning over the sensor console. "They're predictable in their reactions, not in their movements. If we create multiple points of influence, we can keep them off balance indefinitely." The first attempt was simple. A drone projected a shifting magnetic field along the edge of the swarm's path. The creatures paused, slowed, and adjusted. The humans did not stop. They created another field, then another, each overlapping with the previous in unpredictable ways. The swarm hesitated repeatedly, its flowing form breaking apart into sections that struggled to reunite. From the planet below, children watched the faint trails of drones across the sky, pointing excitedly. Parents whispered stories of the humans who had returned, not with weapons of destruction, but with tools of protection and intelligence. "They are brave," one parent said, "and clever. They do not fight with anger, they fight with thought." The humans coordinated, each crew member improvising in ways that complemented others' actions. Pilots darted between drones, subtly altering their paths, testing reactions. Sensors fed live data to engineers who made instant adjustments. The Resolve itself moved in arcs, its engines creating gravitational shifts that, combined with the drones, nudged sections of the swarm in precise directions. Vance watched the operation unfold. Her voice was calm but firm as she issued instructions. "Focus on patterns, not speed. Predict their reactions and change them before they anticipate. Remember, we are guardians first. Every move must protect life." Hours passed as the humans danced through space with unmatched precision. The swarm, for all its intelligence, could not predict the sudden, creative shifts humans introduced. It adjusted repeatedly, but each adjustment only created new opportunities for humans to guide it further from the planet. For the first time, the aliens observing from the Aurelia Prime were visibly impressed. Counselor Thale murmured, "They are not following protocol, yet they are effective. We cannot understand this strategy, and yet it works." Vance knew their greatest strength was not technology or numbers. It was imagination. While the swarm reacted mechanically, humans thought like living, creative beings. They invented solutions in real time, adjusted strategies, and collaborated in ways no other species could. Their so-called anger had been misunderstood. It was not destructive, it was focus, determination, and passion in action. Suddenly, the swarm split, two sections moving toward separate settlements. Holt reported, "Captain, they're testing us, two directions at once. Our current setup can't handle both simultaneously." Vance paused, considering the options. Conventional logic would suggest choosing one side, leaving the other vulnerable. Humans did not operate that way. "We don't choose," she said. "We find a way to do both." "Engineer Chen, can we divide the currents, create overlapping fields that target both paths?" Chen's hands flew over the controls. "It's risky, but yes, we can create alternating pulses. They'll have to react to each, and it will slow both sections." Vance nodded. "Do it. And keep monitoring their reactions. We're improvising, but every adjustment must protect civilians." The plan unfolded beautifully. Alternating magnetic pulses nudged the swarm sections in different directions, creating a temporary separation. Drones moved swiftly to reinforce the pattern, projecting subtle light barriers that guided the creatures without harm. Below, civilians remained unaware of the precise orchestration above, only sensing safety and order returning to their streets. In the control chamber, the crew exhaled quietly as the maneuver succeeded. The swarm's two sections had been diverted from the cities, confused and delayed. It was not a victory in the traditional sense. There had been no battle, but it was a triumph of creativity, patience, and teamwork. Vance allowed herself a brief smile. "Good work. This is the kind of thinking that makes humans unique. We do not overpower, we outthink. We do not dominate, we adapt. Remember that?" Even as they celebrated the moment, the crew remained alert. The swarm was intelligent and would recover. It would return and it would be stronger, but humans were prepared. They had proven that even a threat that seemed unstoppable could be guided, managed, and mitigated without destruction. That was the essence of their power: ingenuity, compassion, and determination. As the cycle continued, they experimented further. Drones were used to project holographic decoys, drawing sections of the swarm into harmless loops. Magnetic and gravitational shifts created small corridors that forced the creatures away from critical zones. Engineers and pilots collaborated seamlessly, thinking several steps ahead while adjusting to real-time behavior. Every decision, every improvisation reinforced the humans' advantage. On the planet, children had begun to draw images of humans as heroes, tall, brave figures floating among the stars, guiding light and hope to the helpless. Adults quietly shared stories with one another, marveling at the humans' ingenuity and courage. They did not speak of weapons or attacks. They spoke of protection, of cleverness, of beings who acted when others only watched. Vance knew the galaxy had underestimated humans. They had dismissed their anger as recklessness, their emotions as weaknesses. Yet in the vacuum of space, with the fate of lives in their hands, those so-called weaknesses became their greatest strengths. Humans were daring yet careful, emotional yet logical, unpredictable yet precise. They were a living paradox, and that paradox was what made them unstoppable. As the day wore on, the swarm began to retreat again, its movements hesitant and irregular. Humans had not forced them away with power, but with creativity. They had introduced uncertainty where there had been certainty, hesitation where there had been momentum. The creatures were intelligent, but intelligence alone could not counter imagination. Vance looked at her crew, pride swelling in her chest. "This is only the beginning. They will return, but we will be ready. We've shown that planning, improvisation, and teamwork can overcome even a force that seems impossible. Remember that feeling, the power of being human." Holt leaned back in his chair, exhausted but exhilarated. "Captain, we've only seen a fraction of their abilities, but even so, it feels like we can handle anything." Vance nodded. "We will. Humans adapt, we protect, and we endure. The galaxy will see it. Not because we are perfect, but because we refuse to fail." The planet below slept peacefully under a blanket of stars. Cities glimmered with lights restored, streets were calm, and families were safe. Above, humans continued their watch, knowing that vigilance and creativity were just as important as bravery. They had not fought the swarm with weapons. They had guided it, redirected it, and protected lives through intelligence and courage. And in that moment, the galaxy began to understand something new. Humans were not just another species. They were guardians, thinkers, and innovators. They were angry, yes, but that anger was a focused force, capable of shaping events, saving lives, and changing the course of history. Captain Mara Vance stood alone at the viewport for a moment, looking at the stars stretching into infinity. She whispered almost to herself, "We will protect them, no matter what comes, no matter how impossible it seems." And for the first time since the swarm had appeared, the galaxy felt hope. A hope carried on the ingenuity, courage, and determination of the so-called angry humans. The calm of the planet below was deceptive. Humans in orbit could see the faint shimmer of the Vorash swarm reorganizing, its movements slower now, more cautious, but undeniably present. The swarm had learned from their previous encounters, adjusting to the humans' unpredictable tactics. It was clever, adaptive, and relentless, but so were the humans. Captain Mara Vance and her crew knew that every wave brought new challenges and new opportunities to showcase the creativity and determination that had made them indispensable to the galaxy. "Captain, sensors indicate the swarm is dividing into 3 separate groups," Lieutenant Holt reported. His hands moved quickly across the console, highlighting each group in different colors. "They're spreading out, trying to approach multiple settlements at once. If we don't act, they could reach areas we haven't prepared." Vance studied the data, her mind working quickly. 3 groups at once. That's a complex situation, but not impossible. Humans adapt, we don't panic. "Engineer Chen, can we deploy the drones in 3 simultaneous formations to cover each path?" Chen's fingers flew over the controls. "It's risky. We'll need perfect timing to keep the currents aligned. One misstep and the patterns could fail." Vance nodded. "We've never played it safe, and we won't start now. Prepare the drones. I want 3 protective corridors, each guiding the swarm away from civilian areas without direct confrontation." The crew worked like a single organism, each member aware of the other's roles, anticipating moves before they were made. Humans were not rigid in their strategy, they adapted in real time. Their improvisation was their strength. Drones deployed with precision, projecting subtle magnetic and gravitational fields that nudged the swarm in desired directions. The first group approached a city nestled among tall cliffs and winding rivers. Normally, this terrain would slow the swarm, but its intelligence allowed it to adjust quickly. Humans acted. Drones created a series of invisible corridors, gently guiding the swarm along winding paths that avoided populated areas. Holographic projections mimicked terrain obstacles, giving the illusion of impassable walls. The swarm hesitated, turned, and redirected, exactly as intended. Meanwhile, the second group moved toward a valley filled with agricultural settlements. The humans introduced a pattern of light pulses through the drones, creating shadows and reflections that confused the swarm. It paused repeatedly, trying to adjust to the unexpected stimuli. Children and adults watched from safe zones below, marveling at the glowing trails of drones that seemed to dance in the sky, guiding danger away without a single strike. The third group moved over open plains, where no natural obstacles existed. Vance knew they had to create something artificial, something unpredictable. She turned to Holt. "Can we create temporary energy fields that mimic hills and rivers, something that forces them to adjust their path?" Holt's eyes lit up. "Yes, Captain. We can use the planet's natural magnetic currents, enhance them with our drones, and generate moving barriers that shift every few seconds. They won't be able to anticipate the changes." "Do it," Vance commanded, "and keep track of the civilians. Our priority is protection, not spectacle." The third maneuver was a test of coordination. Humans had never managed all 3 groups simultaneously. Yet their ability to adapt, improvise, and trust one another turned what could have been chaos into a carefully choreographed operation. The swarm paused, tilted, and moved around the invisible obstacles, frustrated by the unpredictability. In doing so, it inadvertently kept itself away from the populated areas below. On the planet, people watched the sky with wonder. The humans above were not just pilots or engineers. They were guardians, orchestrating a ballet of light and motion that protected life without causing harm. Children pointed and laughed, adults whispered thanks, and even the coalition aliens observed in awe from their command ships. Counselor Thale, who had once doubted the humans' methods, spoke softly to Admiral Kryn. Their so-called anger is not recklessness. It is focus, adaptability, and the courage to act when others hesitate. They are creating solutions no calculation could predict. Vance allowed herself a moment of pride but did not relax. She knew the swarm was intelligent, learning with every cycle. Humans had to remain unpredictable, their strategies flexible, their minds sharp. The next phase would test their creativity to its limits. A sudden alert appeared on the console. Chen's voice rang out, slightly tense. "Captain, I'm detecting a cluster forming near the planetary poles. It's moving faster than expected. If it reaches the communication arrays, we could lose contact with all emergency shelters." Vance's expression sharpened. "Then we create a diversion. Holt, deploy the polar drones immediately. Use light and magnetic patterns to draw them toward the uninhabited northern plateau. Engineer Chen, prepare the adaptive corridors to redirect them once they reach the plateau." Holt and Chen moved with practiced efficiency, their actions seamless and confident. The northern plateau became an artificial maze, shifting and changing as the swarm approached. From orbit, it looked like a glowing network of moving lines, invisible to the naked eye but enough to confuse the creatures. The swarm slowed, redirected, and ultimately followed the paths humans had created, staying far from populated areas. Vance watched, satisfaction building, but she knew their work was far from over. "Good," she said quietly. "We've protected lives, guided the swarm, and maintained control, but they're learning, they'll change, and we must be ready to change with them." For hours, the humans continued their intricate operations, guiding the swarm away from settlements, diverting them over uninhabited regions, and using the terrain in innovative ways. Each maneuver required attention, creativity, and trust. They were not using brute force. They were using imagination, intelligence, and an unyielding commitment to protect life. On the planet below, life continued as humans worked above. Children slept in safe zones, adults cooked meals, and communities shared stories of the Guardians in orbit. The humans had not destroyed the swarm, yet they had neutralized its threat. They had done so without violence, relying on clever solutions, observation, and rapid adaptation. Vance allowed herself a rare smile. "This is the power of humans," she said to her crew. "We do not dominate. We do not rely solely on technology or rules. We adapt, we think, we protect. That is why the galaxy underestimated us, and why we succeed where others fail." The swarm, meanwhile, was retreating again, slower and more hesitant than before. Humans had guided it, redirected it, and confused it without inflicting harm. Its intelligence had been challenged, and it responded by pausing and withdrawing. Humans had shown that unpredictability, creativity, and cooperation could shape even the most relentless force. Vance knew this was more than a tactical victory. It was proof that humans had something no other species could replicate: the ability to improvise under pressure, to combine emotion with reason, and to turn challenges into opportunities without causing harm. The galaxy had not seen this before, and it would take time for others to fully understand it. As the cycle ended, the humans reviewed their work. Every drone, every corridor, every light projection had contributed to the success. Civilians were safe, the swarm was temporarily contained, and the humans had proven that courage and imagination were as powerful as any weapon. On the resolve, Vance addressed her crew. "We have protected countless lives today, but our work is not finished. The swarm will return, and it will be smarter, faster, and more adaptive. But so will we. We will continue to act, to improvise, and to protect. That is what makes humans unique. That is what makes us unstoppable." Holt leaned back, exhausted but exhilarated. "Captain, I've never seen anything like this. We're working without weapons, without attacking, and yet we're guiding the swarm, protecting everyone. It's incredible." Vance smiled. "That is the power of focus, creativity, and heart. We are angry, yes, but that anger is not destructive. It is energy. It is determination. It is the drive to protect life no matter the cost." Above them, the stars twinkled like witnesses to their triumph. Humans had come to the rescue once again, not through destruction, but through ingenuity. The galaxy had seen that intelligence alone was not enough to face the swarm. One needed imagination, courage, and an unshakable commitment to the greater good. Humans possessed all three in abundance. On the planet, families looked to the sky, feeling a quiet sense of security. They did not understand the science behind the glowing trails and shifting corridors, but they understood the results: safety, protection, and hope. They began to whisper stories of the humans above, the so-called angry humans, whose courage and creativity had saved their lives without causing harm. Vance gazed at the horizon of stars, feeling the weight of responsibility and the thrill of achievement simultaneously. The swarm would return, but the humans were ready. They had demonstrated that ingenuity, collaboration, and the willingness to act could overcome even the most intelligent and relentless threats. "Rest now," she said to her crew. "Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but today we've shown the galaxy the true strength of humans. We protect, we adapt, we endure. And that is why the so-called angry humans are a force unlike any other." As the orbital lights of the humans' ships reflected on the planet's surface, a quiet peace settled. For the first time in cycles, the world slept soundly under the guardianship of humans who had turned fear into strategy, uncertainty into opportunity, and anger into a force for protection. The Vorash swarm had learned to pause, to hesitate, to observe. But humans had shown that thinking beyond rules, acting with courage, and combining heart with intelligence could shape the impossible into reality. And as the stars sparkled silently above, Captain Mara Vance and her crew prepared for the next cycle, confident that no matter what came, humans would continue to adapt, to protect, and to rescue, proving time and again that the galaxy could rely on them. The galaxy was quiet. But the quiet was uneasy. The Vorash swarm had paused, regrouped, and returned, more complex and unpredictable than ever. Its presence hung over the planet like a shadow, an invisible tension that humans could feel in their bones. Captain Mara Vance knew the swarm had learned from every encounter, every diversion, every subtle obstacle humans had introduced. They were faster, more coordinated, and more determined to reach the settlements below. But humans, too, had learned. From orbit, Vance observed the planet. Cities glimmered with life, children played in protected zones, families moved with calm confidence. The humans above had earned trust, but the test was far from over. "They will come," she said softly, more to herself than to anyone else. "And we will be ready." Lieutenant Jaron Holt, ever vigilant at the sensor station, leaned over the console. "Captain, I've never seen them behave like this. It's almost deliberate. They're circling, splitting, merging. I think they're testing our coordination. They want to see if we can handle multiple pressures at once." Vance nodded. "Then we show them. Humans are not just reactive. We are proactive, imaginative, and relentless when protecting life. We will demonstrate that today." Engineer Lyra Chen joined Holt at the console, her fingers flying over the controls. "Captain, I've been mapping the swarm's patterns. They're learning, but they still respond strongly to unexpected shifts. If we can create multiple layers of influence, magnetic currents, drone projections, energy corridors, we can guide them without confrontation. We can redirect their entire formation safely." Vance's eyes lit up. "Exactly. Prepare the full grid. We're going to turn the swarm's intelligence into confusion, not through force, but through ingenuity." The crew sprang into action. Every human on the Resolve and its companion ships contributed ideas. Drones were deployed in waves, each with slightly different functions. Some projected light and holographic barriers, others created magnetic currents, while small agile craft moved unpredictably, introducing constant variability. Humans worked not as individuals, but as one coordinated organism. Their creativity and cooperation were unmatched. The swarm approached. From orbit, it looked like a living river of shadow, flowing and shifting in intricate patterns. It moved with precision, yet humans noticed subtle cues: the way it adjusted to light, the way it paused near projected obstacles, the way it separated and rejoined. Every pause, every hesitation, every adjustment was a signal. Humans saw opportunity where others saw only danger. Vance's voice cut through the comms, calm but firm. "Remember, we are guiding, not attacking. Our goal is life, safety, and order. Every action must reflect that. Predict their reactions, but do not be limited by them. Adapt, improvise, protect." Holt piloted one of the lead drones close to the swarm. "Captain, the swarm is splitting into 5 distinct clusters. They're testing the corridors. If we manage this, they will follow our guidance completely." Vance smiled. Then let's make it happen. Engineer Chen, adjust the fields to cover all clusters simultaneously. Use overlapping zones. Every path should lead away from settlements and toward uninhabited regions. The operation was complex beyond measure. Humans had never coordinated so many elements at once, yet their minds thrived on challenge. Where other species might panic, the humans trusted one another's instincts, adapted to real-time feedback, and turned the swarm's intelligence into a tool. They created dynamic corridors, shifting light patterns, and moving magnetic fields that the swarm could not anticipate. Each cluster hesitated, adjusted, and ultimately moved along the paths humans had envisioned. On the planet below, civilians looked up at the sky in wonder. Children laughed as glowing drones wove patterns above them. Adults whispered, sharing stories of the humans who had returned again and again, not as conquerors but as protectors. The humans above had not destroyed the swarm, they had guided it. They had turned fear into order, chaos into opportunity, and danger into safety. Counselor Thale, observing from the Aurelia Prime, spoke softly to Admiral Kryn. They do not rely on power or weapons. They rely on thought, imagination, and courage. I can see now why the galaxy feared to underestimate them. Their so-called anger is a concentrated force for protection, and it is extraordinary. Vance monitored every drone, every shift in the swarm's pattern. She noticed that one cluster was approaching a canyon, a narrow passage that could create problems if the swarm slowed too quickly. "Holt, send drones ahead to create a moving corridor," she instructed. "Make it gradual, smooth. Guide them like a river, not a wall. They must flow, not collide." Holt nodded, expertly maneuvering the drones. Energy fields shimmered and shifted, magnetic currents nudged, and holographic barriers suggested impossible paths. The swarm paused, recalculated, and moved forward exactly as humans had intended. Engineer Chen called out, "Captain, all clusters are following the projected paths. The civilians are safe, and the swarm is contained within the corridors. This is working perfectly." Vance allowed herself a rare moment of pride. "Excellent. Maintain the guidance, but do not relax. The swarm will try to adapt again. Humans thrive on challenge, so let's give them one more layer of unpredictability." She directed small, agile craft to weave unpredictable arcs above and around the swarm, creating shifts that changed every few minutes. The swarm's clusters adjusted repeatedly, unable to settle on a single path. Each adjustment reinforced the human's control, not through force but through constant, creative influence. Hours passed and the swarm began to retreat, not in fear but in adaptation. It had been guided away from settlements, channeled along safe corridors, and ultimately redirected toward uninhabited areas of the planet. The humans had not fought the swarm, they had solved the problem. Their ingenuity had transformed potential destruction into safety. Vance looked at her crew, proud and exhausted. "Today we've done more than protect lives. We've demonstrated the power of human creativity, collaboration, and courage. We've shown that intelligence combined with imagination can accomplish what sheer strength cannot. Remember this feeling. Remember that humans adapt, protect, and endure." Holt leaned back in his chair, a smile on his face. "Captain, I think the galaxy is finally seeing what we've always known. We are angry, yes, but that anger is a force for protection, not destruction. We've guided the swarm without causing harm, and yet we've achieved the impossible." Vance nodded. "Exactly. Humans do not rely solely on weapons or rules. We rely on creativity, adaptability, and heart. That is why we succeed. That is why we endure. That is why we are unique." On the planet, families began to emerge from safe zones, their eyes lifted to the stars. Children waved at the glowing drones above, imagining the humans who guided them as heroes. Adults whispered stories, passing the tales along quietly, marveling at beings who had risked and adapted to save lives without causing harm. Even the aliens of the coalition observed with awe. The so-called angry humans had turned a near-impossible situation into success. They had shown that fear could be countered with creativity, danger could be neutralized with thought, and chaos could be guided with care. Their actions were a revelation, a demonstration that courage and ingenuity could match or surpass brute power. Vance addressed her crew one final time for the cycle. "Today, we've done more than guide the swarm. We've proven that humans are capable of protecting life through creativity, determination, and cooperation." The galaxy may never fully understand us, but they will remember the results, and we will be ready for whatever comes next. The swarm, now distant and disoriented, moved across uninhabited regions, following the paths humans had designed. It had learned, adapted, and retreated, but it had been guided without harm, demonstrating the unparalleled effectiveness of human ingenuity. Vance turned to the viewports, staring at the stars. We will always act. We will always protect. We will always adapt. That is our strength. That is what makes humans unique, and that is why the so-called angry humans will always come to the rescue. Below, the planet began to glow with life once again. Streets filled with people, children laughed in open spaces, and families shared meals, safe and unharmed. Above, humans continued to monitor, adjust, and guide, a silent but unyielding force dedicated to protection and creativity. And in that moment, the galaxy understood. Humans were not just another species. They were problem solvers, innovators, and guardians. Their anger was not destruction. It was energy, focus, and determination directed toward life. They were unpredictable, imaginative, and courageous. They were human. Captain Mara Vance smiled as she watched her crew work, drones shifting, corridors moving, and the swarm following the paths they had designed. The mission was complete for now, but the message was clear. Humans were unstoppable when protecting life. Their ingenuity, courage, and heart were unmatched. And as the stars sparkled silently above, the galaxy knew that whenever danger arose, whenever hope seemed lost, humans would come. Not with weapons, not with destruction, but with creativity, intelligence, and determination. The so-called angry humans had come to the rescue, and they would always return, ready, capable, and unstoppable.